Oh, good afternoon, and welcome back to another session, our extended relationship minute. We have these sessions every Saturday afternoon at 5 o'clock, and so we welcome you, those who are joining us today.
Good afternoon.
For the first time. And then those who are regular, who always join us on these sessions, we welcome you back on today's session. Today we, as we have advertised, we are talking about the question of compatibility, compatibility in relationships. It is something that many people are concerned about. Many people want to know how important it is in a relationship for one to be compatible with your partner. And that's what we are going to be addressing today. Let's start from the Bible. In the book of Genesis 2 verse 18, a very common text with regards to marriage. The Bible says, "And the Lord God said, it is not good for a man to be alone. I will make him a helper comparable to him." It wasn't just an issue of getting him a helper, but this helper had to be someone who is comparable to him. In other version it says suitable to him. But here God was actually saying this helper will be someone who is comparable, meaning this person will be a companion who will complement him in order to complete him, not necessarily to compete with him. So from the very creation of man, we realize that the issue of compatibility, the issue of complementing each other was critical even in what God was creating. So the purpose of marriage was supposed to be a union between two people who are in themselves complementing, and at the end of the day also completing each other because they are comparable. So again, we find in Genesis 2 verse 23 and 25 that marriage was not just about complementing each other or somebody who is comparable to you, but also chemistry was important. Chemistry was important. We find as soon as Adam woke up in verse 23 of Genesis 2, he says, "This is the bone of my bones, the flesh of my flesh. She shall be called a woman because she comes from a man." Adam became poetic, just like when a man is in love. Every time when a man falls in love, he becomes poetic. And there Adam was making his proposal to Eve, or making a vow to God. In verse 25, the only verse that we find in the Bible that describes marriage before there was a fall, we find again the Bible describing marriage in terms of intimacy and chemistry. Because in verse 25, the Bible says the two of them were both naked and not ashamed. Intimacy is defined, and if we had time, we're going to look into the fact that it was not just an idea of physical nakedness, but it also means that they were naked to each other emotionally. They were naked in every respect. There was nothing hidden between the two of them. They were connected intimately. So the issue of chemistry and intimacy, we find it right at the beginning, the issue that we want to address today. And as we look into the question of compatibility, we find that compatibility is often defined as a long-term potential for the two people to coexist, to live together, and to have success. Compatibility deals with how the two as a couple have got similarities in terms of lifestyles, in terms of principles of life, in terms of values that they cherish, meaning that the two work together, they enjoy each other's company, and they have a good time together. So they complement each other and they are compatible. And so there are a number of areas of which the issue of compatibility is critical and important. Firstly, we can look into the issue of religion. I happened to have been talking yesterday to a group of young people from another church. We were talking about the issue of being unequally yoked, because the issue of relationship of marriage, there is a need for you to have compatibility even on the issue of religion, particularly because religion also informs much of our values and principles that we cherish. So in fact, the issue of religion is one stop that has got more influence in the conduct and behavior of people, more than education, more than our culture, more than any other thing. So compatibility in the issues of religion is critical. It's critical to find somebody that you're compatible with, that you believe in the same things, that you cherish the same things, and therefore we know that your values and behavior and conduct in the family will be informed by that common religion. Compatibility also can be looked at into the issue of education. Now, many people look into compatibility on the issues of education to mean that if you've got a B degree, you must get another person with a B degree, or if one has got a master's degree, you must also have somebody with a master's degree or something similar. I don't really believe that. I believe that education informs much of our lifestyles, our worldview, our understanding of life, and so on and so on. So education has a way of changing how we view the world, how we live our lives, how we conduct ourselves, and the kind of lifestyles that we live. So that's what education does. Now, if you are educated and you have a certain lifestyle and so on, but there are people who, even without education, have the same worldview, have the same understanding of the world. Now we can talk about the richest man in the world, Bill Gates, and say that he's a university dropout, but you cannot turn around today and say that because he's a university dropout, he cannot scale up in terms of worldview and understanding of the world and issues as somebody with a B degree or with a master's degree. So there are people who, even without education, can scale up, can understand and see the world in the same way as the person with education. So let's not use education as a standard of saying I'm accepted. Let's look at the byproduct of education, what education produces in you in terms of lifestyle, in terms of conduct, and in terms of values, and how you view the world as a result thereof. There are people who are well educated, who have gone to school and have got a number of degrees, but they remain dry. They remain, by and large, without any change in their own worldview. It's almost like education change just was a mental issue that did not affect the overall change in their own lives. So it is possible that there are people with a number of degrees whose lifestyle have not improved, whose worldview has not improved in spite of the education that they've accumulated. And whereas there are people without education who can have the same worldview. So let's not use qualification in terms of a relationship, but let's look at the end product of what education does. Then there is issues of culture. Again, issues of compatibility when we look into the issues of culture. Now, By and large, Christianity has kind of created a certain culture of itself. Religion changes our culture so that our cultures does no longer differ that much. In fact, today you can almost talk about a township culture. You can talk about a village background culture. You can talk about, instead of looking at culture per tribal background, you can look at influences that we have in suburban culture and so on and so forth. But culture, we can stretch it from beyond just our own sphere and look into the issue of multicultural or multiracial relationships, where the issue of compatibility is key. And I learned something which I think is quite important when I was, many years ago when I was studying at university. I figured out something that many of the young people, black students, who hanged around with the white students, do whatever they were doing in their pubs, they drink together, they go out together, and sort of adopt that kind of culture and lifestyle, they ended up with girlfriends or boyfriends within the multicultural or multiracial groupings. And then I realized that it is not so much about racism that people are afraid of. It's not so much about the color of the screen. It's more about the culture, the lifestyle that you live. So if you're already living a lifestyle that is similar to ours, so then what's the problem? We can be accepted and adopted. So again, when you talk about compatibility, even there, across the cultures, it is whether you are adopting the similar kind of cultural or standards of living that the other one has. And in that case, if you have that kind of similar standard, you can have a relationship which is across the culture or across the racial background. Another interesting issue around compatibility, it is about age. Now, when you look into the issue of age, it's interesting because I was doing this as a research of my upcoming book, which is The Journey to Marriage in the 21st Century, which is it was going to be more about preparing people for marriage, young and old, which will be coming in the next 2 months or so. But as I was doing the research here, I found something interesting, that the highest successful marriages were those whose age gap between the spouses, between the husband and wife, is less than 1 year. So the most successful marriages are those where the age gap is the lowest. And in the research, which I suppose it might be applicable here, it was done in the US, it was found that those people who had spouses whose age difference is less than a year, their divorce rate was less than 3%. And that continued to grow as the years grows. To the extent where those whose age difference were 25 years or more, their divorce rate was 97%. So when you look into the issues of compatibility around the age and issues of success in marriage, the lesser the difference in the age, the more successful the research shows, and the higher the difference, the more riskier. I suppose again you can say age is a factor that informs your worldview. Those of us who grew up under apartheid and have got a mentality, a little bit of apartheid in our thinking, in our worldview, might be challenged by the younger generation whose background is the bone freeze, that they never went through what we went through. So in terms of that compatibility of age, the lesser the difference, the better. In terms of standards of living, where you live, how you live. But yes, we know that those things are not really rigid, because somebody yesterday who was living out of poverty in an informal settlement, and you meet him at a university and is getting a degree, and soon his life gets changed into a different kind of standard of living. The same can be said about education. There are people who get married. I was talking to a couple that came to see me, and the man was telling me that when I got married to my wife, I was a taxi driver and she was already professional. And now he is a senior government officer in government, a senior manager in government, because after their marriage, he got himself educated and changed even his standards of living. So in those cases, even in education, look at potential instead of looking at where a person is exactly. But one of the things that is critical in terms of compatibility, I will say it's common destiny. And this is where Amos 3 verse 3 says, can the two walk together unless they've agreed? If we are walking together from here, where I live, to Johannesburg, we must have agreed that Johannesburg is our destiny, is a place where we're going. And if you look into life as an issue of not just living together, is to look into marriage not just as something to enjoy and to have good time with, but to look into marriage in view of it being married for a purpose. And I was writing not too long ago about a purposeful marriage, that we should not just get married, we must get married for a purpose. And that means there is somewhere where I'm going, and there is somewhere where we must agree that we are going together, and our marriage is going to achieve a certain purpose on earth. That purpose to the glory of God, that purpose to the honor of His name. So in reality, compatibility in this case has to do with an understanding of the other person, to say, do we have a common destiny? Are we going to the same place? Because it will not help if I want to go towards Bloemfontein and another one is going towards Musina in the north. We are going towards opposite direction, so we won't start the journey. And the Bible says, can they walk together unless they've agreed? It's a rhetorical question that the Bible asks. And critical for compatibility, common destiny, common purpose in life. It's almost like there is a need beyond just telling you I love you and you are beautiful and you are handsome and so on. Ask, what is your purpose? What are you here to achieve? Where are you going? So that in that view we can know that we are walking together. Common, again, compatibility as in terms of principles and values. What are the things that you value? What are the things that are the guiding principles of your life? What are those things that are more important? And those things are more critical than things like the kind of job that you have, the income that you have. Those things are not so critical in terms of compatibility, because we know that people can transform their lives, and also you can have a big job today and tomorrow it might be gone. So when we come to the issues of compatibility, there is a need for you as an individual to know yourself, know your destiny, know your purpose, know where you're going, so that when you meet the other person, you already know yourself. It is crazy to think you can know another person, whereas you don't know yourself. You have never taken time to get to understand who you are. What are you all about? Where are you going? What do you plan to achieve? So know yourself. And after knowing yourself, have 3 categories when you talk about so that when you deal with compatibility with the other person, you must know your own place, where you're coming from. In those categories, have number 1, the deal breakers. These are principles or values or issues that are non-negotiable. If you don't fit into any of this one, the deal is off. It can be a variety of things. It can be issues of if you don't believe in the same things that I believe in, if you are not in my denomination, is a deal breaker. It can be things like somebody who already have children, or somebody who was married before, is a deal breaker. Whatever it is, You must have your own deal breakers. Let's not be, somebody says, don't be so open-minded until your mind drops off to the ground because you're open-minded. Know yourself, know what you want out of life, so that at least when you meet someone, don't be so desperate that you say, I want anything. No, you don't want anything. You're not just going to take anything. The reason why people are getting divorced is because there are things that they found out that they're not happy about in spite of importance of marriage. So have your own deal breakers that are non-negotiable. Second to that, have important values or principles that you cherish. Okay, these are something that I cherish. These are guiding in my life. They might not be deal breakers, but they are guiding principles. Number 3, have the nice to have. These are optional extras. So if you tick the deal breakers, you are not part of those, and you tick even the important values, wonderful. And then you even tick some of the nice to have, then you know that this fellow is scoring higher in terms of your scale. I will say deal breakers 50%, important values 30%, and the nice to have 20%. Then you've got a 100% scale. So that's how you measure in terms of your engagement with the other person in terms of compatibility. Now, somebody says, here are some of the list of things, of the signs that you are compatible with your partner. Here are some of the signs. Number 1, you don't question your love for their partner. You don't question it. You know beyond any doubt that this person loves me. And you know things about each other that no one else knows, which means that you are open to each other in terms of communication, in terms of secrets. You are open to one another. You are not a closed box. You are feeling comfortable enough to open up. And it goes back to Genesis 2:25, which says, they were naked and not ashamed. That means you can be naked to this person and not be ashamed and share your secrets. Number 3, you don't want to change the person. You are comfortable with who the person is. You don't want to penal beat them and chop their legs or chop their hair or whatever. You are comfortable with who they are. Number 4, you enjoy spending time with the person. You enjoy spending time with the person. Number 5, you have common interest. Number 6, very important, you fight each other. Now, it sounds like a negative, but couples who fight each other shows the sincerity of the relationship. They don't sweep everything under the carpet. If you find someone that you can fight with, because remember, fighting helps you to develop mechanism on how to solve problems, because all of life you will always have conflict. And if you can develop a mechanism to solve such issues, then you know that you have a better chance of success. So you fight because you are sincere, you are open. With one couple that I'm working with and premarital, I hope they are watching, and I've been saying to them, because they don't seem to have any conflict, and I'm wondering, and I wanted to just get a conflict for them. I want them to fight over something so that they can exercise, but they're just so nice people towards one another. And so last time we talked, they scrambled a little fight that they once had, to show that at least they did fight with each other. And number 7, you can work on serious problems together. You can address issues together, and both of you can imagine the future together. You can see this person with you into the future. You can see getting old together and being with this person, with each other. Obviously, you are attracted to each other, and you try to get along with their families. You are comfortable with their families, and your relationship keeps on being fresh. It's not stale, it's not stagnant, like a stagnant water. It keeps on being fresh. And lastly, you make effort to get along with one another. Now, talking about the issues of compatibility, it is important for us to realize there are people who often make a mistake of assuming that there is only one person. Sometimes they call a soulmate somebody who is just for you, one person. Sometimes I've heard it being called in the charismatic world the rib, that you have your rib, which is somewhere. And if you find that rib, it is one person that you complement each other in every way. I don't believe so. I don't believe there is that one person in the whole universe. But I believe that in your meeting and mingling with people, try to find as much as possible someone whom you have common values, common principles, common destiny, where you complement each other, where you are in the same direction with this particular person. So do the best you can. Now, both in our marital and premarital counseling, we use a tool called Prepare and Enrich, which is recommended by the General Conference. I'm probably one of the few people in the union who use it extensively. We've done hundreds of couples through this. This tool is an online tool which gives us an assessment of a relationship. So before we start any counseling, premarital counseling, we take them through this tool, and this tool gives us a compatibility rating. It rates for us the level of compatibility. There are 5 levels of compatibility that there are. There's one that is highest, and there's one that goes to the very bottom, which is those who are struggling to hold it together. Now, but even there, obviously the tool breaks down assessment based on the 10 pillars of marriage, on how they fare in each of those pillars. And those pillars will be issues like communication, conflict resolution, financial management. It will be family and friends, roles and responsibility, sexual expectation, and so forth. So all of those pillars are rated. So what that tells us, it tells us the levels of compatibility. But we never say to a couple, no, you cannot get married because your level of compatibility is too low. No. What we then say, out of that, we say it means that if the level of compatibility is low, that means the couple must work harder. And if the level of compatibility is high, there is less work that they need to do. So we don't just do one solution that fits all. It looks on where the couple is and the work that they need to do to get closer to one another and to get to where one another is. And if they are willing to grow towards one another, then they're successful. But there are some couples, and I respect that, there are some couples in the process of trying to understand marriage, in trying to get closer to another, in fact, they grow apart from each other. One couple, after 6 sessions, they came back, they said to me, the more we understand what marriage is, the more we know the expectation, we're growing apart. This will not work for us. It's their own decision. One couple, after 3 sessions, they came back and they said, oh no, we are not ready emotionally, mentally, spiritually for marriage. We respect that. But it is in the journey that you either going to get closer to one another, or in that process the divisions are going to show and you grow more apart from each other. So that's the issue of compatibility. So when we look into the issue of compatibility, we need to understand it's not about uniformity. As we said, it's about complementing each other. Pap and Bryflace, they complement each other. Now, I know vegetarians out there and health reform people might say, what kind of an example is that? But anyway, but a screw and a screwdriver, they are different from each other, but they complement each other. They work together with each other. A nail and a hammer, they work together with each other. Diverse as they are, they complement each other. Whereas a screw and a hammer, they don't complement each other. You can still hammer a screw into the wall, but you are damaging the threads, and so in the process you are not finding something that complement, that work with one another. So the fact that they are different does not mean they cannot work together. In fact, it means that they complement each other. But not everything that is different complements. There are some which are different that doesn't complement. Relationships by nature, it's about bring and share. So you bring the charcoal, I bring the meat, and together we share. You bring the orange, you bring the whatever, apples, I bring the pawpaw, and together we have a fruit salad. So that's what relationship is all about. It's about the two coming together and complementing each other. So let's talk about chemistry. Now, chemistry represents the emotional connection between the two people. How the two connect with each other. That spontaneous sensation, connection, that electricity that comes between the two people, that thing that makes them to be inseparable, and they connect in almost every way. Usually you will find that because of the chemistry that they have, people will talk to each other on the phone until the airtime finishes or until the sun rises. Because of the chemistry, they are inseparable. So whilst compatibility is about how they work together to a particular destiny, chemistry, it's about that chemical connection between the two of them when they meet. Subtle behaviors and dispositions that connects with the behavior of the other person. It's almost like the other person brings petrol, another one brings fire, and together there is a fire that comes in. And it is important because in chemistry, how the other person is feeling, the other one feels the same. Because even though they are opposite and they are different, but they bring in the fire which burns on both sides. So high levels of chemistry often has to do with the opposites. Like the magnetic poles, opposites attract. So one who is a very high energetic person normally connects with somebody who is more relaxed. Introverts will find chemistry with extroverts instead of finding some which are like that. So you can almost imagine that. So you somebody brings the wood, another one brings the fire, and then it happens. So people who are intense in planning and in order, they normally have connection with those who are spontaneous and disorganized, who do things at the spur of the moment. But those are the things that brings them together. Now, unlike compatibility, the lack of chemistry does not necessarily repel each other. It doesn't necessarily repel. It just means that there will be low emotional intensity or lack of emotional intensity. Whereas lack of compatibility repels you, but lack of chemistry, it just means the relationship will be kind of dead and boring. So if we look into compatibility and chemistry, the relationships with high compatibility but little chemistry, those relationships, they are fine, they are functional, they are okay, but they are dull. There is no spark. We agree on things. We agree on things that must be paid and how we must live, and we must go to church, and we must pray, and the children must eat, but yet there's no spark. So it's when there is high compatibility and low chemistry. On the other hand, when there is high chemistry and low compatibility, it is that situation where you find a person, orderly, church person, but you are going out with a rascal, somebody you don't have any compatibility, but the fire is strong. There is this passion and there is this fire that goes on with the wrong person. And many of those relationships don't last because of the fact that you don't have a common destiny. All that you do when you meet is like electrical wires. They cross and there is a spark that happens. And many people get fixated by that spark that fire which the person that's with the person who is opposite. Even if we tell you that this person is a criminal, he just came out of prison and whatever, but the people says, but the fire is what connects us. It's what is most important to us, and that's why many people will go on with those relationships. So it is therefore important, if one has to summarize the issue of chemistry and compatibility into 4 quadrants, into 4 different areas, you will say, if we have low chemistry and low compatibility, that relationship is dead from the start. It doesn't exist. There is no intimacy. There is no conversation that makes any sense. We are not going anywhere together. It is dead from the start. Where there is high chemistry and low compatibility, the whole thing feels right, but yet it is so wrong. It's where you are just excited by the spur of the moment, by what is happening. And you just pick up something from somebody from the dumpster, but yet you are enjoying the fire of that. And then at the bottom level, you have got low chemistry and high compatibility. So in this case, the chemistry is not there, but we are compatible. So we are more like boring relationship. Intimacy does not exist. There is no spark. We are here just waiting until death do us part, because there is nothing happening in terms of the spark. We talk things logical and analyze them, and yet there is no fire. We have the wood, but there is no fire. And then high chemistry and high compatibility, that's the sweet spot. There's a great balance between intimacy and practicality of the journey. Oh, baby, that's where you want to be. You want to be at this place where you finally find somebody. You are going to the same place. You have same values. You have got same principles. You have got the same destiny. And yet the fire is strong. So while you're going on your way to heaven, you are on fire. You are enjoying every moment. Everything is happening in your journey to the destiny where you're going. You are not bored with one another. You enjoy the company. The principles is right. Everything is right about this relationship. So if there is a recommendation in terms of where you need to find yourself in, we have dealt with the principles of compatibility. Find somebody who is compatible. But that does not end there. But find someone where the spark is great. A true story of a young person who came to see me some years ago, and she told me about this, that she used to go out with this guy, and this guy, they were connected, they were spark. He says, we used to talk until the airtime gets finished, and we go and buy some airtime and we talk again. He says the fire was great until she found out that he was cheating on her. And so they broke up because of that. So they were not going to the same destiny. He was not principled as she was. And then she says she found a guy in the church, a wonderful guy, an assistant deacon. One of those guys that are nice, wonderful guys who drive some old Corolla. They are principled. They're not gonna do golf and Vrpa and all of those things. He's a guy, nice conservative guy. He takes care of the church and whatever. She says he was ideal, principled, God-loving, whatever. But he says the fire was not there. There was no connection. There was no intimacy. She says if we talked to each other on the phone for 5 minutes, it was long. She says the other day we were driving together from here to Mpumalanga. He says we only spoke from Pretoria to Mpumalanga. He says we only spoke for 10 minutes. She says to me, what must I do? I said to her, my child, marriage is long. If you are going to only talk for 10 minutes, you are going to be silent with each other for a very long time. it doesn't seem to be wise. So it was one of those issues where low, non-existent chemistry, high compatibility, and but yet that will be a dull marriage. So as you go out there, make sure principles are important for guiding your compatibility and the way you complement each other. And make sure, do not neglect the issue of chemistry, how you connect intimately, how there is a fire, how there is a spark between you, so that the wood that you have can burn. May the Lord bless you and keep you until next time.
Well done, man. That was a good message, man. Yo.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Thank you.
That was Mashudu Ravhengani, proudly brought to you by Living Power Ministries. You can find us at livingpower.org.za or on WhatsApp at +27 78 215 5737. Living Power, empowering mankind to unleash its full potential.